It is Saturday, March 14th, and welcome to another edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. And one of the things I enjoy about this show is that nothing is really ever scripted. I freestyle because there's so many things to talk about. And as I was about to go on this subject I planned today, I decided to change my mind for a minute because I have Mr. Operative, who's somewhere in the Middle East. Mr. Operative, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Armstrong.
Yes, and Bruce Fein, our constitutional law expert. You know, here's the question. What else is going on in the world in terms of foreign policy, things that are being neglected and underreported that we're not discussing because we're so focused on everything Middle East, Gulf states, the United States, Israel? What else is there, Mr. Operative? Because you're in the Middle East at this very moment.
Well, the impact is, although there's a regional conflict going on here, but it has far-reaching impact. Because when you look at the primary oil suppliers for the government of China and the Chinese economy come from Venezuela and Iran, and both of those supply chains are severely interrupted right now. So this has had a profound effect on the Chinese foreign policy strategy on what they intend to do with Taiwan. They can't very well invade Taiwan, take it over now with the uncertainty that they face in their energy supply. So President Trump has made a couple of moves that have had a profound and disproportionate impact on the national security issues that affect Asia, but it's all going on in the Middle East or Latin America. And that's something the media misses. Usually they're not talking about it, certainly not that I've seen.
You know, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Pakistan and how that conflict continues to escalate, because it's certainly not in the news.
Yeah, the Pakistan thing is a very important and profoundly impactful activity because their issues with the Taliban that took over in Afghanistan are clear and profoundly important for the region, and the Pakistani intelligence service has got a very good handle on what's going on regionally. There's some shooting going on, but the impact that you have outside of Pakistan, outside of Iran, and outside of Afghanistan, they're all linked together geographically. So those countries have a very important relationship between the three of them because of the geography of the region. And the Iranians I don't understand the rosy assessment on being able to hammer them and get them in line, because they're still projecting power, they're still doing things, and we seem to have overlooked the importance of the unconventional nature of the way Iran conducts its foreign policy, using terrorism as a tool. They're very good at this. And we've sunk their Navy and wiped their Air Force out, but their great strength remains terrorism and unconventional warfare, nonlinear warfare, and as the Chinese describe it, unrestricted warfare. And it's something that, will they win in the long run? Likely not. But can they bloody us harshly, both inside the U.S. and in the region? Absolutely.
You know, Bruce, I want to come to something. You know, one of the things that our president touted is all these places in the world where he brought about peace, where there was war and brutal conflict. I mean, there's so many places, even in the Delta, we can talk about where the president. Has any of those agreements unraveled? Where are we now?
Well, we can go down. There's supposed to be the border war between Thailand and Cambodia. It still remains very, very incendiary. He said that he had solved the problem between the Democratic Republic and Congo and Rwanda over M23. They're fighting and killing each other again. And he said that he brought peace between Pakistan and India. They're always and have been at loggerheads for like 70 or 80 years. There's no peace in Gaza, where still there are killings there.
You really believe they're still killing in Gaza?
Absolutely, there are.
And why won't the media report this?
The media is fixated on what's the current event, and Iran is a bigger event right now, so Gaza kind of gets pushed to the sideline. I mean, that's how the media operates. It's news, it's something different, and the impact on the United States is going to be more profound. With the attack on Iran, if you shut down the Strait of Hormuz, you know, everybody's going to feel the reverberations in inflation. Oil and gas prices are going to climb through the roof, and we don't know how much that's going to be confined really just to Iran. They've already attacked Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, so it could spread further. And I don't want to overstate the potential for this becoming far more than just an attack on Iran with Israel and the United States, but it could end up something like the Archduke Ferdinand and killing in Sarajevo, giving birth to World War I. It could get out of control because there are lots of reasons why China and Russia want to support Iran. They'd like to get the United States sucked into another Vietnam. So the fact is China and Russia are going to support Iran, and they have land borders. They're not going to cut them off by water. That's why they call the fog of war. This could become far worse than we anticipate because there isn't any clear end game. There isn't any clear objective that we're at. You remember Clausewitz wrote that war is politics by others' means, but that means you have to have a political objective. I think it's pretty clear that Iran is not going to collapse. They have a new leader. They have 80 million. It's not a small country like Venezuela.
It's twice the size of Texas.
Yeah, and it has support clearly of Russia and China, which are superpowers.
So, Mr. Operative, we're having this conversation, and we haven't even mentioned Ukraine and Russia in this discussion. And it is a fact that Russia, the sanctions are having no impact on them. Russia is still finding a way to get oil into Iran. We have the intelligence that shows this. And clearly, Russia is doing no more in Iran than what the United States was doing under Joe Biden in Ukraine, sharing Russian intelligence to make sure that Ukraine could hit the right strategic spots.
Yeah, the whole foreign policy machinery that would be normally well staffed up by diplomats, is well staffed up by CIA people and the intelligence apparatus of the United States isn't working very well at the moment. And the president is operating in an information, I don't want to say it's a vacuum, but it's certainly not as robust as it needs to be, so that you have a real-time reporting apparatus that tells you what is going on, but most importantly, what is coming. And without being able to forecast accurately on what's coming next, you're always at a disadvantage because you're reacting to events, not able to preempt or steer events before they really get going. And that places the White House in a difficult spot. And I don't have a golden bullet solution for that other than changing out leadership people and insisting and making the organization work better. And that's possible. You can do that. I watched that happen under the Reagan administration, where they gutted the place and took control of it and made it work better.
Well, let me play on something you just said. I've not really given much thought to this. You know, you think about this, America. For those of you watching, we appreciate your watching and the comments that we receive. Is that the United States, as a result of this escalating conflict, has literally shut down and shuttered 2 embassies in the Middle East. And the U.S. embassies are the main targets of the Iranian missiles. And so my question to Mr. Operative is that when you shut down these embassies, because these embassies, to both of you, provide the intel, they're the voices on the ground, they move things on the ground, and if your embassies are shut down, you're literally at a standstill. Nothing you can really be effective. Those embassies play such an important role. And so, Mr. Operative, something we have not discussed here, what is happening to the administration, given the fact they're crippled by the fact that they have no intelligence sources on the ground because the embassies are shut down?
That's a great point, Armstrong, and that's been a burning issue for decades. You spend all this money on defense and all this money on hardening the embassy. You plus up the Marine Security Guard detachment, and you prepare yourself for difficult times. And the first sign of trouble, we shut the embassy down and leave the country. And that the apparatus comes apart at the seams, and everybody leaves and goes to another country or comes all the way home. And right when you need ground truth and to be with your allies, that's one of the most profoundly important aspects, is if you pack up and leave and you're leaving the country, you say goodbye to your liaison people, and you get on a plane, an Air Force plane, and you're gone. And they are alone in the battle space. And make no mistake, that has a very negative impact. And we fought that over many years of my career, where the official position was shut down and leave, and the station would just stay behind. People would stay in the country and go to ground with the locals and stay with them. You cement relationships that are generational even at that point. And I've witnessed that, because there's still people in charge that I was with during the war in Iraq, the 2 wars that I was involved in. And they look at you as a brother or a family member. And they never let go of you because you stayed with them during the most difficult time. That has an immeasurable effect on your relationships. But if you just pack your stuff and run, they remember that.
Well, that's why they, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that means that we're probably relying upon Israeli intelligence.
And
they have a bias in Israel. They're thinking of them rather than us.
It's not our agenda, it's their agenda. And we become useful tools to the Israelis.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Exactly. And they're not just targeting the embassies, they're targeting our bases in the Middle East as well. But I agree with you that I think the intelligence on the ground is very, very slim and probably biased in favor of Israeli objectives. And it's alarming when the Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense Hegsa says, no, we really didn't anticipate how Iran would respond. You didn't? Maybe you should have had intelligence on the ground, so it was more likely to assess, could they shut down the Strait of Hormuz? What are the ramifications going to be? What is the vulnerability of the Gulf states to Iranian threats? Are they going to capitulate? Anyway, all those issues, especially another thing we haven't talked about is Turkey and Erdogan.
And Greece.
But
and Cyprus.
Yeah. But Erdogan
who's looking for an opportunity. There are opportunities.
Yeah, of course.
In this.
Absolutely they are. Erdogan especially, he's very hostile to Israel. Although he's not all that close to Iran because they share a border. There's reasons that he could make deals. He was helping Iran escape sanctions earlier. Anyway, it's a huge, huge problem. The chessboard is more difficult. It isn't just kings, queens, and pawns. And I don't think we really knew what the likelihood of a response is going to be. And I believe that's why we're at 6s and 7s. And there's no exit strategy right now. We're bombing Israel. I mean, Iran clearly has capacity underground. And it's typical when a country, even if it's very unpopular amongst its people, you attack it. That's a rallying crowd. And the other thing that's disadvantageous, I believe, is the baby Shah. This is the eldest son of the Shah of Iran, who was overthrown in 1979.
Well, we haven't seen him.
Yeah. Well,
why?
But he's in the op-ed pages.
But why haven't we seen him?
Well,
they say he's injured and wounded. How deep are his wounds? Or is he just being used as a tool to unify the country? Well, and maybe we don't know his condition.
Yeah, well, I think the Iranian Republican Guard, they're the ones who really are running the show. Like in Pakistan, it's ISI. It's really not the titular leaders here.
Let me take a break. I have a feeling I need to take a break. Maybe I'm not hearing things, but I have that feeling. But anyhow, we got to talk about the Strait of Hormuz and other things here on this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. We'll be back. I want to come back to the Strait of Hormuz. Mr. Operative, where are we and who has the advantage? And it's interesting that Iran said recently we should use the Strait as leverage. I thought that was an interesting declaration, Mr. Operative.
It's something that the Iranians have a long history of doing, is unpredictability and unconventional warfare tactics that tend to continue to shock the Western world, which amazes me. Coming from the society that invented the truck bomb, they invented hostage taking as a national tool. They invented the word assassin. Assayin is a Persian word. They were the first to use political assassination as a foreign policy tool. They have a long history, and it's always been that way for any evaluation or analysis of an enemy. Is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And past behavior and tactics with Iran, their great teeth is unconventional. They don't engage us in a pitched battle because you can't beat the United States military. But you can tie the United States in knots with unconventional stuff. Hostage taking, they paralyzed an entire presidency under Jimmy Carter by taking the embassy hostage and holding people for 444 days. They invented the car bomb. They invented political assassination and used it in Lebanon. They used it to kill their president in one of the most complex assassinations I've ever seen anywhere in the world.
Was this?
And we were willfully ignorant of this. We're not looking at it. And I was stunned when the Secretary of War made a comment about secondary and tertiary effects. What did you expect? And we said, well, we didn't look at that. And so I'm like, good God, with a country like Iran, you didn't look at it?
You know,
and there's a reason that their largest embassy in the world is in Mexico City. Doesn't that strike people as odd?
Yeah, so they can easily deploy on American soil. But tell us about the Strait of Hormuz. Who's winning? Who has the edge there, Mr. Operative?
That is one of those disproportionate, unconventional warfare targets that the impact of throwing some mines in the water, which is not a difficult task, and you have one explosion, you change the whole calculus for the strategic waterway. And we've already been down this road with Iran when we had the tanker escort process under the Reagan administration. It was very difficult to patrol that waterway and escort ships because essentially the U.S. Navy is drawing fire. And we don't have a robust counter-mine capacity anymore because counter-mine stuff was a World War II problem. And you can't have metal ships in your detection thing because you're setting off the multiply different types of fuses that you have in mines today. And the current is quite swift. It's a narrow waterway, narrow by navigation standards, which is about 20 kilometers. But you've got 5 to 10 kilometers of traffic in each direction. So there's not a big risk of running into each other, but it's a swift current area. It's not an amateur waterway for you to learn how to navigate a large craft because you can lose yourself quickly in that waterway because it is a complex area with the bottom terrain changing periodically because of the current. So you have to know what you're doing in there, and there's so much ship traffic every day, and tankers are notoriously, I don't want to say they're clumsy, but they don't handle like a speedboat. You've got to pay attention. You got to know what you're doing to operate a tanker so you don't lose control of the boat.
So let me switch to Mr. Fein here. So how would you describe the current balance of power between us, China, Russia, Iran? And you know, Russia, China, and Iran, they seem to be coordinating. Well, they are coordinating more closely. Is it a very fragile strategic alignment?
Well, it's an alignment that can change every day, but I don't think it militates in favor of the United States. I mean, to show you how odd things are, we granted an exemption just a day ago for Russia to sell its oil to India because they were worried about the price of gasoline jumping to $5 a gallon by November and an impact on the congressional elections. Think of that. We're fighting against Russia in Ukraine. We're trying to put sanctions on Russia that exist to try to cripple it economically, and then we grant an exemption to sell oil to India, which we've been opposed to for a long time. I do think that the difficulty the United States has is we don't have an end game. It reminds me of after 9/11, in the Afghan-Pakistan border, our special envoy, Richard Holbrooke, was asked, well, what's the definition of victory? What are we about? He said, it's like obscenity. We'll know it when we see it. We didn't really have an objective, and we spent 20 years and finally left. And I think it's wrong-headed not to have a clear, as Clausewitz said, a political objective. You know what you're trying to achieve. Just to fight and destroy for its own sake, it doesn't accomplish anything. I remember in the first Trump term, he dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. He made a huge destruction. But what did it accomplish? There wasn't any strategy there. So I think at present, I think this is going to be a losing proposition for the United States. It's costing staggering amounts of money. And I don't really see what the benefit of the United States is. We put in jeopardy the oil and gas supplies out of the Persian Gulf. And what is this about? Yeah, Iran was a horrible country. But the fact is that Iran is not attacking, the United States. Wasn't going to come here. And there are ways that we can engage in what I call invincible self-defense without going abroad in search of monsters to destroy. And the longer this war endures, I think the more injury to the United States economy. And it'll be, I think, also very threatening to the Persian Gulf states, Kuwait, Bahrain,
how much do you think,
Qatar.
How much can the American people absorb, whether it's rising fuel prices, grocery? I mean, there's so many things that are being impacted already, tariffs being passed on them. What is their tolerance, and do you think there will be just an avalanche in the midterm elections?
I've spoken to candidates, and they tell me if gasoline's at $5 or more a gallon in November, the Republicans will be
swept away?
Swept away, yeah. Because it's true, it's not just the energy prices, it's the tariffs that are now coming back in a new guise.
And we're feeling a different kind of war here.
Yeah. And I think that the American people, despite how much mischief Iran causes in the Middle East, they don't feel that Iran is coming to attack the United States. To the extent they know much about Iran, they don't remember the hostage crisis. They don't understand 1953, we overthrow the only democratic prime minister in the history of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, in favor of the corrupt Shah. But I think that the ability to assign, the war in Iran to some urgent national security interests it's a hard sell, I think, in the United States, which is why, at present, most of the Americans do not support the war.
Mr. Operative, so what should be the end game?
There's a couple of points I'd like to throw out there in response to your guest comment. One of the biggest issues that we have right now, and I don't have an answer for this, is the president has been in power for 5 years, counting his first term and a year of the second one. He has yet to use the Oval Office to address the United States population. And I do not understand why he doesn't talk to the country. He could turn this around, because the greatest threat to any administration is the overwhelming nature of propaganda and misinformation that gets into the discussion, and it just swirls around and feeds on itself. When you speak from the Oval Office and you ask the networks for an hour of time, they have to give it to you. So he can talk directly without a filter to the American people and explain these questions that just were raised, explain these issues on why we're there. The American public will support the president if he does articulate what he's trying to accomplish. And there's a lot of things that are happening that are good for the United States. I mean, he has all but canceled the risk of an invasion of Taiwan because China can't do that right now. They're really short of oil. That sanctions are a blunt instrument tool that has outlived their usefulness in today's world. An example of that is all the oil. It's assumed that you're starting from zero, but you're not. The Iranians have 20 million barrels just in one area that is on tankers. And if you blend those tankers, you blend them with Russian oil, and then you create a new product with a new registration and chemical makeup, you have 20 million barrels of sellable oil. The sanctions don't work.
I want to get this in before I say goodbye, because I know I'm running over for this segment. I think it's important in just a minute to say this to our listeners. You know, the President and the Secretary of Defense must project victory. We're winning any day now. The war is going to end soon. But I want to remind you that is not always the reality of the situation, because they need the American people to believe that we're winning and that the end is right around the corner. And then you can go back to Afghanistan, you can go back to Vietnam, and you've heard the same rhetoric again, and it was just wars and those conflicts just went on and on and on and on. And just because the president says that he's going to select the new leadership of Iran, the Iranians have shown us that is just not the reality. So my point is, and I have great respect for the president and what they're trying to navigate, but bear in mind, do your homework to separate the facts from projection.
Yeah, it says Hiram Johnson said, "Truth is the first casualty of war."
Yes. Yes.
Beware.
Beware. I just want to make sure you understand that, okay? And what we try to do here is bring the facts, not propaganda, not projection, as current as we can. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to the United States and talk about crime. We'll be back. Thank you, sir. I got to tell you something, okay? I don't know if I've ever seen this before, and I know Leonard Snipes and Derrick Parks are joining us, and Bruce Fein is still here. I watched those terrorists who drove up from Philadelphia to the Gracie Mansion, which is the home of New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani. And there was law enforcement. There were officials. Loaded with guns. They just took these cocktails and these explosives and they were throwing them in front of the Grace. I said, why did they shoot them? I'm telling you, I have never, ever seen anything so brazen. And I asked myself, are these drones? Are these robots? These are kids. They had no fear. They didn't care. What did we witness? Mr. Parks, what did we witness there? Is this the new terrorism?
I believe it is. I believe that the temperature right now, or the climate, if you will, everybody is kind of taking sides on their positions, and now they're acting very provocative.
Wait a minute, they didn't think they were going to be shot? Did they not care?
I think they didn't take none of that into consideration.
How can you not? You're tossing bombs.
Well, I think if the police officers would have shot him, then I think that would have kind of set the tone.
Why didn't they shoot him?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. The reality of it is
that was a clear threat. Everybody saw it. It's being recorded. How could you not shoot them? You never knew what else they may have had on them.
That is absolutely true.
How could they not be shot?
That is absolutely true. I think it just took everybody by surprise. Like we're not
surprised.
I think
law enforcement coming. Yeah. Look at what happens with ICE. They shoot people, innocent people.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about? That was a real threat. That was not Peretti or the woman that got the kill shot in Minneapolis. That was a real threat.
That was absolutely real.
Yes.
That was absolutely. And it's questionable why they didn't use deadly force.
Leonard, help us understand that scenario, because listen, these kids, if they can get away with that, others will say, I have no accountability, I have no responsibility, I can just show up, I can bring up explosives, and they're not going to shoot me. I'm going to get away with it. And here's the thing, some of us may die, but at least you know you can take out your target or blow up the building. I mean, what's going on here? This is crazy.
Armstrong, look, we have drones now. And for my time in the criminal justice system, which included a short period of time with the United States Senate, that's what everybody's scared about. You don't even have to throw a bomb at a crowd. All you have to do is fly a drone into a crowd.
Yeah, but they did not fly no drone. They threw it right there with law enforcement watching. Come on, Leonard.
Yeah, that's true. But my point is that it's impossible. It is one of the things that we have to come to grips with. Is if somebody wants to carry out a bomb attack, whether it be by drone or remotely or in person.
Normally they try to hide it, Leonard. They don't want to be discovered. They do it in a clandestine way. We're talking about something in broad daylight with law enforcement. You're not addressing this. Or maybe you can't.
They got their point across, and I think that's the only factor that matters to them.
Bruce?
Well, a couple of things. One, they don't escape with impunity. They're going to be prosecuted and may get the death penalty.
Why were they not shot?
What? Well, that's another question. Now, sometimes when you shoot, you make martyrs out of those who maybe shouldn't be martyrs.
But they were a real threat. You don't know what else they could have done. What if they had time to shoot them and they were able to run away, the officers were not able to catch them, and they blew up people, and tons of people died. Then somebody was saying law enforcement didn't do their job. I mean, you understand how critical this situation was.
No, I understand that. I'm just reluctant to
Don't be
criticize
reluctant. You
law
don't have to be
enforcement
reluctant here.
because these are very fact-sensitive issues. These are young kids. What are they? Teenagers?
They're not kids. They're terrorists, Bruce.
Well, they're teenage
threats.
terrorists. I understand that, but you can excuse people who are younger.
Yeah, no, you cannot excuse them. Can you excuse them? I don't know what he's talking about.
I'm not trying to. I'm
A threat is a threat.
A 19-year-old is treated differently under the law than somebody
Anybody who's carrying a cocktail and a bomb should not be treated any differently when the lives of the mayor and other innocent people are being threatened. What are you talking about?
Because in the
You're becoming too soft.
in the criminal justice system, it is one factor that plays into the equation.
There's no fact except there's a threat.
There's a threat.
Let's address that. They were a threat.
They were absolutely a threat.
Come on.
I'm not denying that they were a threat. I'm not denying that they should be punished. Maybe they should get the death penalty. Anyway,
but the death penalty, they should have died on the scene is what should happen. I'll say it. They should have died there. They were a threat.
Well, I think
exactly what should have happened.
One of the challenges with law enforcement is the threat becomes if you catch them as they're throwing it. Once they've already thrown it, right, and they start to retreat.
But you don't know where they're retreating to.
That is true. That is true.
You're still a threat.
So
you did not apprehend the threat. The threat is still a threat.
You're absolutely. The threat is still a threat.
Yes.
But the thing becomes is they no longer present themselves as an actual threat if they don't have those items directly in their hands, if you will.
Okay. So let me go back to Leonard. Is that just a one-off? Americans have every right to be concerned and fearful because, listen, let me tell you something. From what I saw, law enforcement is not going to always protect you. You could lose your life.
You're absolutely right.
That's just a fact. That's my concern.
Yeah, but
let me hear from Leonard. Go ahead, Leonard.
We have between 12 and 20 million per estimates of illegal immigrants crossing the border. That's, we have literally thousands upon thousands of people with criminal histories who have crossed the border. That much we do know. So this is not something that you can control. Anybody can commit a terrorist act. Anybody can fire into a house. Anybody can shoot at somebody. The fact that it doesn't happen on a day-to-day basis, to me, it's astounding. Again, we've always been concerned about this. We do know that there's a terrorist threat every single day. I mean, the FBI and the intelligence...
Yeah, but Leonard, I'm going to stop you again.
Exist.
What message do we send to copycats who wants to do the same? When they can watch this in broad daylight and you can get away with it. What message are we sending?
John, they're not getting away with it. They're going to be punished, Armstrong. Why do you suggest they can do this with impunity?
The only thing that saved us is something out of our control because it didn't detonate and nobody died. So what you're saying, they didn't get away with it because nobody died, but they could have died, and it's just by fate that they did not die. I mean, law enforcement has to be allowed to take out a threat.
Yes.
If they did not take out a threat, that may be coming directly from the mayor, who's a sympathizer, because he did not really deal with the real hatred and what they're being radicalized. He did not deal with that. I think it's a reflection. I'm telling you, if that had happened in the South, okay, or in D.C., they would have been shot. Maybe that is what New York is becoming. Maybe that's it. Yeah. Because of the mayor that they had, they felt they were restrained and could not do their job.
Well, I definitely see your point. I think the reality is that it was an actual threat. The police officers should have used deadly force
yes,
in this particular situation. And I understand where you're coming from. Well, what message are we sending when we don't immediately neutralize these situations? Because then, if people think they can get away with it, and you get in front of a judge and somehow you get paroled or, excuse me, you get a lighter sentence, it's not necessarily sending the right message, right? And so the message has to be, we have to put these threats down immediately and confidently.
You know, the Sarnoffs, you know, they didn't, I think the idea they're going to get parole is kind of absurd. They can be like the Sarnoffs, these are the people who killed people at the Boston Marathon. I'm just reluctant. These are police officers. They put their lives on the line. Sometimes they overreact, like in Minneapolis. So you have to find a balance between being too abrupt in using lethal force that we've seen.
That's what they had to do in Austin, Texas, because if they had not used lethal force in Austin, Texas, more people would have died.
Yeah.
If they had not taken it out.
No, I'm saying, but it's
using deadly force.
I'm saying it's fact specific. Now, I don't know whether Mamdani said, "Hey, you can't use
it
deadly
has to
force
reflect
because
his
X, Y,
leadership.
Z."
There's no other answer.
Well, I don't know. My
And if you're
experience in government
crippling
is
law
a lot more
enforcement from doing their job, not only you're threatening citizens, you're threatening their lives as well. You're dealing with the morale issue, and I'm going to tell you, nobody's going to find themselves signing up to become law enforcement in that kind of environment. It's just not.
But I think we need to wait and see whether there's evidence that the mayor gave an instruction you're not to use deadly force. Maybe he did. That he's worthy of criticism.
If I'm not a police officer, it is my instinct. If I see somebody carrying a bomb about to blow me up, I'm going to shoot them.
Well,
that is your instinct.
Yeah,
this is how you train.
That is
what are we
how you
doing here?
Well, I don't like to second guess police officers. I respect their judgment.
I'm going to second guess them there because there's no way those two kids should have been able to tell their story. They got away and brag about how, in fact, they could have detonate the bombs on people. They were there to do harm. They were there to kill people and cause destruction. That was their only agenda. And then you heard what they yelled out at Akbar at the very end.
Yeah.
The Allah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were radicalized.
Yeah, for sure. They were invoking, it's a form of jihad, probably, to justify what they're doing.
How widespread do we think this is, Leonard Snipes?
We don't know. I mean, that's the bottom line answer is that we don't know. Again, you're talking about 12 to 20 million people unauthorized coming across the border. We do know that there are literally millions of people with criminal histories who have crossed that border. We don't know how many terrorists crossed that border. We don't know how many mentally ill people or violent people cross that border. We don't know. That's why law enforcement, that's why the FBI, that's why the security agencies are trying to measure this every single day. But, this is going to happen. They're on the radar of law enforcement thousands of times a day.
I'll tell you this, and I'm going to take a break. When someone threatens the perimeter of the Secret Service, and we've seen this recently at the White House, they don't live to talk about it. When someone gets in a car and drive on Capitol Hill to Capitol Hill Police and they're going through a barrier, and this was a woman a few years ago, they shot her in cold blood. They just took her out. They took no chances. Something has changed from how law enforcement deals with threats to how they deal with threats now. I want to believe this is an isolated situation in New York, and if it's not, we have a real problem on our hands, and we'll be back. I'm sorry, we do. That guy should have been killed. Should have been taken. Behind every headline about war, there's something far more important, human lives. And we have to remember the American service members who have recently lost their lives in the growing conflict involving the United States and Iran, and even here at home. And we also have to remember that many others who have been wounded and those who remain deployed tonight in harm's way as this conflict continues to escalate. And these men and women volunteered to serve this country. They raised their hands and took an oath to defend the United States of America, as Leonard and Greg Parks here have. And they stood watch so the rest of us could live these freedoms that we celebrate today. And today we have to honor them in the most simple and meaningful way we can. And so we want to speak their names. Bruce, everybody, we want to speak their names. We want to know who you are. Captain Cody A. Court, Sergeant First Class Nicole M. Amore, Sergeant First Class Noah Titgens, Sergeant DeClan Cody, Major Jeffrey R. O'Brien, Chief Warrant Officer 3 Robert M. Marzan, Sergeant Benjamin N. Pennington. Each of these Americans have a story. And it's important that we remember their families and loved ones who suffer as a result of them making the ultimate sacrifice, friends who admired them, communities that were proud of them. Their sacrifice reminds us of something every generation must remember. And Parks, tell us what it is that every generation must remember.
That freedom is not free. It's at a cost. In order for us to live the way we want to live in America, there has to be warriors that have to toe that line and make sure that we're safe and make sure that we can live the American way. And every day, there's men and women who sacrifice their lives or put their lives in harm's way so we can go to the grocery store, we can go to the movies, and we can live as Americans. And so I think we get so used to not realizing that we do have to take a step back and honor and appreciate every American who's put on that uniform to protect our rights and our freedoms.
And you know, Leonard, I get so bent out of shape by what happened in New York City, because I don't want any law enforcement officer, anybody in uniform, to die for some senseless reason. Because someone has this misguided indoctrination where they feel that their problem lies in the people that wear uniform. These men and women who are willing to stand in harm's way for something larger than themselves, that we have to remember, who are injured in this conflict, service members whose lives have been forever changed in the defense of this nation at home and abroad, their courage and sacrifice must never be forgotten, Leonard.
Absolutely. And on top of that, we have 25,000 police officers, fewer police officers, per the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So now we're having a hard time keeping police officers on the job. We have scores of cities throughout the United States where they claim to be hundreds of police officers down. We may be seeing a bit of stabilization in terms of the number of police officers. So it's just not the military, who I have immense respect for, but police officers as well put their lives on the line every single day, making split-second decisions. And then if they screw it up, then there is immense criticism, which is one of the reasons why we've lost tens of thousands of cops.
And you know, Bruce, these are babies over in Iran. These are young kids. I mean, they signed up for the benefits. They probably could not get on track for the career they wanted, and they were bored and depressed and needed something to do, and they decided it was a fun thing to join the armed forces. But man, let me tell you, this is life and death now. And our president is talking about boots on the ground.
Yeah, he sure is. No, I understand that. And I think we want to salute the courage, that gave birth to the country. This is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. The 56 signatories of the Declaration, they signed their death warrant. They lose, they're going to get killed by the British as traitors. But they weren't reluctant to sign because they were fighting for something higher. And many of them did die. Many had their properties destroyed in the American Revolution. But that's our birthplace, taking that risk. And we need to be willing to take that same risk if we're going to preserve our rights and liberties that we inherited because of their sacrifices.
You know, Derrick, and I'm going to give the president a lot of respect here, okay? Because I believe Washington, D.C. is the most secure place in the world.
Agreed.
The most. Washington, D.C. is also the place that our enemy would like to destroy, bring down monuments or symbols more than any other place in the world. And yet, since Trump has been in the White House, and he's brought in the National Guard, they're sort of in the background now. I've never, I can't tell you, felt more safer, more at peace, because I run early in the morning. I'm out there, I'm out in the neighborhoods. I can feel the difference. And my attitude is, if you can do it in Washington, every city deserves it. I mean, look at Memphis. Look at what, you don't even hear about the crime there anymore. I talked to people who live there, they said it's a different place.
Sure.
So, you know, sometimes it's the process may not be the right process,
Right.
but the goal should be the same.
Agreed.
To get these thugs off the streets and protect these communities. And the president and the mayor, let me give the mayor credit, because without her it would not be possible. Let me give Mayor Bowser her kudos. But Washington, D.C. is now a safe and secure city.
Sure. So one of the things that I think becomes a collateral benefit is the fact that right now, because we're at war, and we're at war with Iran, and it's been worded that some sleeper cells will be awoken, right? So what city would they prefer to hit to make an impact? Would be the city. So the collateral benefit of the president's agenda as it relates to the National Guard is that we have more eyes and ears out patrolling. And so that becomes a huge benefit that we wasn't even thinking about, well, excuse me, that he wasn't even probably planning or thinking about, because his initial thought process was to address local crime. But now we're under another level of threat that we have more eyes and ears that's out there that's going to be able to protect individuals that's milling around in Washington, D.C.
And Leonard, it is a fact. If you're a criminal and your job and your way of life is crime and pillaging and intimidating people, when you have a strategy like this in places like Memphis and Washington, D.C., where you have the National Guard and more law enforcement, you have to rethink your strategy and just go elsewhere, because it's not business as usual any longer.
Well, absolutely. We've talked about having a cop on every corner for decades now, especially when crime was sky high. And so now we sort of theoretically have a cop on every corner in the cities where you have the federal surge and you have the National Guard being there. So there's no doubt that it's going to make for safer cities. And in my mind, there's no doubt that it should be expanded to other cities throughout the United States.
I think that we're likely, however, to see changes in location with some of the cities with a guard where crime plunges. The criminals aren't stupid, they're going to go to the weakest point. And we see that also in the war against drugs. You cut off some supply lines and then they move elsewhere. So Caribbean, the Pacific, Mexico, Colombia, Haiti, or whatever. That doesn't mean that we don't make certain cities safe, but there certainly is going to be a way. The criminals aren't stupid. They're going to go for the soft belly, which means that you have to have a comprehensive approach if this is going to succeed overall. If we just have kind of special oases of peace and then elsewhere the criminals go and just choose different targets, it'll diminish the overall benefit to the country.
You know, Derrick, you spent 10 years in law enforcement, and you know what? You know, you don't. I don't think we ever want to believe that we cannot get crime under control where it becomes normal. And I think places like Memphis, even Chicago, even D.C., and other major cities let us know if we work as partners and we strategize and we're all on one accord. It's like Rudy Giuliani showed us from his days in New York.
Sure.
In a big city like it, you can get crime under control.
You can.
You can stop it.
You absolutely can. I mean, I think it's the approach and everybody buying into the situation. And it's a unified front as absolutely can be achieved, right? But the challenge just becomes that, as your guest alluded to, is that if the goal has to be that we want to abolish crime, not just kind of push it
to Baltimore,
to other surrounding jurisdictions. Yeah. And you know, we have an oasis here, but as soon as you step out, it's kind of like going to a resort in a third world country. It's beautiful behind the wall, but as soon as you decide to go on the other side of that wall, it's like, you know, what the hell are we at?
It's like a war zone.
Exactly. So I think it becomes a thing to where if we can get these jurisdictions to work communicatively, excuse me, and have a crime focus, I think things will be a lot more smoother. But each jurisdiction have their own crime problems. Some is prostitution, some is drug, some is violent crime, some is a little bit more murder. So everybody has their own, or every jurisdiction has their own sore thumb, if you will. and they may feel this is a little bit more important than that. But I think if we can get all on the same accord, I think we can really address crime.
You know, and I also want to pay respect to my brothers and sisters in media who also sacrifice their lives and on the front line and die in the line of duty. And to those families, we say this today: your honor honors you, your nation honors you, your nations remember them, and their sacrifice will never be forgotten. Even in moments of loss, we should remember something else. America is still a nation filled with hope. Across this country, people today build businesses, teach students, and care for patients, and build better neighborhoods. We appreciate your sacrifice. God bless you, and enjoy your weekend. Let me thank all my guests.